Just confirm me, am I audible and the PPT is visible? Just make sure that everything is perfect from my side. If you find any difficulties, just tell me now. Okay, fine. Let's start our today's class. In today's class, we are going to discuss about a muscular system. So we are dealing with the physiology, system physiology nowadays. In that, we are going to discuss about a muscular system. Okay, before doing that, I want to make sure that you are okay with the basic concepts, right? See, you should know the what are all ultra structure of muscle. For that, you should know what is exactly the muscle is. It is made up of a muscle fiber. And what is muscle fiber? It is an elongated cells that make up a muscle. So muscle is made up of a muscle fibers. So each fiber is surrounded by a structure called sarcolemma. And what is this sarcolemma? Is nothing but a cell membrane. Okay, the membrane which covering a cell, that is nothing but a plasma membrane of a muscle cell. Okay, now this the cell membrane of a muscle fiber is said to be as the sarcolemma. And what is the purpose of this sarcolemma which is covering a muscle fiber is, it is the one maintaining the cell's environment. Okay, the environment of that particular muscle cell is maintained by the sarcolemma and propagates the action potential. I hope you all well aware about the action potential. Now, what about the sarcoplasm? See, the plasma membrane or the cell membrane of muscle fiber is sarcolemma, and the cytoplasm of muscle fiber is calling as the sarcoplasm. And what is it exactly consist of? The just like a cytoplasm, it consists of organelles and myofibrils and inclusions. What is myofibrils then? See, a rod-like units within a muscle fibers. It is a structure present within the muscle fibers. See, what I have said that muscle is made up of a muscle fiber, and what exactly the muscle fiber is having within it? Myofibrils. So group of myofibrils constitute a muscle fibers. A group of muscle fibers make up the muscle. This is how you have to know how the muscle has been arranged. Composed of repeating sarcomeres. What it is consist of? The myofibrils is consisting of repeating sarcomeres, right? And they are contractile elements of the cell. This, because of this particular structure, the muscle, we have a tendency to contract and relax our muscle. That is particularly because of the myofibrils. So now what we have studied, this myofibrils is composed of repeating sarcomeres. And what is sarcomere? It is a basic functional unit of myofibril. See, the functional unit of kidney is what? Nephron. Like in the same way, you should know that the functional unit of myofibril, it is about sarcomere. So you should know that sarcomere constitute the myofibrils, and myofibrils make up the muscle fibers, and group of muscle fibers make up the muscle, right? And see, this sarcomeres is defined by the Z disc, and it is this sarcomere is responsible for the muscle contraction. Right now, what is Z disc or Z line? This is the boundaries of the sarcomere, which is the one, this Z line which support or anchor the thin filaments. Right now, what is A band? See, the muscle fibers is consisting of the Z line, A band, I band, H zone, M line, and thick filaments and thin filaments. You should know what we are saying, what we are denoting the thin filaments, and what is exactly the thick filament. So, thin filaments is say thin filaments is now, this is the Z disc which is going to support the thin filaments. Now, what is A band? The A band is called as the dark band. Okay, and this dark band we can see in the sarcomere, and this A band we are saying that A band as the thick and thin filament. These thick and thin filament are getting overlapping with each other, and we are calling them as the A band. But this A band we are calling them as the dark band. Now, what is I band? This I band we are calling them as the light band, and this I band consists of only the thin filaments. See, this thin filaments is getting supported by the Z disc. Okay, see, this thin filament is flanking the Z disc. Okay, this I band which is getting support from the is a disc. Now, what is H zone? The central region of the A band containing only the thick filaments, and that thick filaments is said to be as the H zone. And where is exactly the H zone is located? Particularly in the A band, exactly the central region of the A band. Now, what is M line? M line is nothing but a middle region of the sarcomere. This middle line, that is M line, this is the one holding the thick filaments together. Okay, now what is thick filaments? Thick filaments, we are calling them as the myosin, and thin filaments, we are calling them as the actin. Now, what is actin, actin and myosin? This is what exactly the motor protein of the muscle fiber, which are crucially involved in the contraction and relaxation. Right now, thick filaments, we are calling them as the myosin. See, this thick filaments is composed of a myosin molecules with the head that binds to the actin during the contraction. So you should know whether the head of the myosin will be bind to the actin, or the head of the myosin that bind to the actin. So you should want to make sure that myosin molecules, this is the one with their head that is bind to the actin during the process of contraction. Now, thin filaments, this thin filaments is composed of actin, tropomyosin and troponin. Now, this actin is the one interacts with the myosin for the contraction. Okay, now what is tropomyosin? This is the protein which blocks the myosin binding site. See, generally the actin molecules have the binding site where exactly the myosin will come and bind to the actin. Now, this binding site which is present in the actin, which is blocked by this particular protein called the tropomyosin. That is where we should know that it is when this tropomyosin is blocking the binding site of actin molecule, then you should know that the muscle will be in the relaxation state. So why? Because when the myosin bind on the actin molecules, now you should know that muscle in the contraction state. Right now, what is troponin? A complex of 3 proteins that bind to the actin, tropomyosin and calcium ions that regulating the contraction. So troponin is also the protein which involves in the process of contraction. Now, what is sarcoplasmic reticulum? See, sarcoplasmic reticulum is nothing but a endoplasmic reticulum. See, based on the location, this ER is the name of the endoplasmic reticulum is getting changed. So the endoplasmic reticulum, which is involved in the muscle contraction, we are calling them as the sarcoplasmic reticulum. What is the main function of this particular sarcoplasmic reticulum is, which is present in the muscle cell that stores and releases the calcium ions. And this calcium ions plays an immense role. It is involved in the process of muscle contraction. Now, what is T-tubules, or we can say the transverse tubules? Now, invagination is nothing but the folding, involution. Now, this invagination of the sarcolemma that helps to propagate the action potential into the muscle fibers interior. So this is what exactly the ultrastructure of the muscle. Okay, you can find the picture in the PPT which was given by the sir. Okay, you can find the picture right now. What is muscular contraction process? So these are all the steps involved in the muscular contraction process. Now, what is the first step? That will be the nerve impulse we can get from our muscles, so that we have to see, for example, we are eating, so that we have to keep our hand in the food and we have to take into their mouth. So for that, we need an impulse from the brain. So the first and foremost step will be the impulse given by the brain, that is nerve impulse. Now, immediately after the impulse have been given, that is nothing but an action potential that is travel along the motor neuron. We have been very well discussed about the motor neuron, sensory neuron, and what is parasympathetic, what is autonomous, right? And now this action potential is now traveling from the motor neuron to the neuromuscular junction, right? Now, at this time, what is getting released? Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is nothing but a neurotransmitter. Now this nerve impulse is causing this particular neurotransmitter to be released into the synaptic cleft, right? Now, when this acetylcholine has been released, it causes the depolarization of the sarcolemma. So you should know that depolarization causes the increase in negative potential or the positive potential. So you have to know all these things. We have been very well discussed in the nervous system, right? See, now depolarization of the sarcolemma. Now what happens to this acetylcholine? Now this acetylcholine is binds to the receptors which is present in the sarcolemma. Once immediately the acetylcholine has been bind to the sarcolemma, this causes the depolarization of that particular membrane. Now what is getting activated once this acetylcholine has been attached with the receptor? T-tubal activation. Now what is happening when this T-tubal is getting activated means the action potential is now traveling down to the T-tubals. Now this, when the action potential has been traveled along the T-tubals, this triggers the release of the calcium ions, and where it is getting exactly released, that is from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now after the calcium has been released, where this calcium is going to bind? This calcium ion is going to bind to the troponin. And once the calcium ion is bind to the troponin, it is causing the conformational change, which means what? Structural change. Once the structure has been changed, that moves to the tropomyosin. Right now, this moves the tropomyosin means what? The tropomyosin has to be bind to the, it is blocking the myosin binding site on the actin. Now once the calcium ion is bind to the troponin, this causes the structural change, and it is immediately taking away the tropomyosin. Now the myosin binding site on the actin is getting free. Now the myosin is getting bind on the actin. Now this protein is involved in the process of contraction. This is how the muscular contraction is getting triggered. If we want to relax our muscles, immediately the troponin, the calcium ion will not bind to the troponin, which means what? It doesn't cause any of the conformational change. Now this tropomyosin is getting bind to the actin. Now this myosin, it is can't get bind to the actin, so that the muscle is involved in the process of the relaxation, just antagonistic to each other, right? Now cross bridge formation. Now the myosin head, now the myosin is getting bind to the actin, okay, for the process of contraction. Now this myosin head, it is bind to the exposed binding sites on the actin. Now it is getting bind to the actin through which site? See, myosin head is the one involved in the binding site of the actin. Now after it is getting binding to the actin, it forms the cross bridges, right? After it is forming the cross bridges, power stroke. See, the myosin head pivots, pulling the actin filament. It is getting pulling the actin filament towards the center of the sarcomere, resulting in the contraction. It is getting pulling using the head. The actin filament is getting pulled by the myosin. It results in the contraction. Now ATP binding. See, entire process is ATP dependent process. If you want to contract our muscle, definitely we are in need of energies. For that, we are getting energy from the ATP, adenine triphosphate. Right now, this ATP binds to the myosin head, causing it to detach from the actin. See, to detach from the actin, this myosin need the ATP. Now the ATP hydrolysis is getting happening. Once the ATP is getting hydrolyzed, it has been break down into ADP, that is adenine diphosphate, and one phosphate is getting released. Now recocking the myosin head for another cycle. See, the if muscle has to be contracted, one myosin is not sufficient to bind with the actin. The process has to be repeated. For that, ATP hydrolysis is keep on happening until we are in the impulse of contraction. Now, how the process of relaxation is getting happening? Now, the calcium ion is pumped back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. See, only because of this calcium ion, it is getting associated with the troponin, it is result in the structural change, that is conformational change. If the calcium ion is not from is when it is not released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, it doesn't result in the structural change. So that this sarcoplasmic reticulum is getting back this calcium ion into it. Now this troponin and tropomyosin result to their resting position. Now this tropomyosin is getting attached with the actin. Now the myosin binding sites are not free, so the myosin can't attach with the actin, so it results in the muscle relaxation. Right? Any doubt with this? If you have any doubts, you can ask me now. Now, what are all the types of muscle? Generally, we have three different types of muscle: skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. So now what are all the main features of this particular muscles? In case of skeletal muscle, you should know that it is a striated. First thing you have to remember, it is striated. Okay, in case of smooth muscle, it is non-striated. Okay, see, striated means we have a partitions or striations. See, this line is called as the striations. So we have striations in the cardiac muscle, but we don't have any striations in the smooth muscle. Okay, now see, this fiber, this smooth muscle is non-striated and this cardiac muscle is striated, and this is the muscle we are calling them as the cardiac muscle, which we can see only in the heart. Okay, none of the other places it is embedded with the cardiac muscle. Now cardiac muscle, we can see this muscle only in the heart, right? And see, it is branched and it is uninucleated, which means what? It has only one nucleus and it is involuntary. See, pumping of heart will be an involuntary an action. See, if this function is, if this muscle acts on voluntary, if it is voluntary in action, we forget to pump the heart. For that, the nature has been gifted that this cardiac muscle has to be function in the, it has to be in the involuntary in action. Now, see, skeletal muscle. The skeletal muscle is voluntary, right? Only if we need, then we'll do this. Okay, that is with respect to the skeletal muscle. Generally, it is being attached to the skeleton. Now, coming to the smooth muscle, it is seen in this, it is in the spindle shape and it is uninucleated and it is also an involuntary in action, and almost all the internal organs is having the smooth muscle, right? This is what a types of muscle is, right? Now coming to the question, what is the primary function of muscular system? Movement. Which type of muscle is under voluntary control? Voluntary control will be the skeletal muscle, right? What is the basic unit of muscle called? What is the basic unit of muscle called? What will be the basic unit? Basic unit will be the sarcomere. Good. Which protein filaments are primarily involved in muscle contraction? Which protein filaments are primarily involved in the muscle contraction? We can say this as an actin and myosin. Good. And what is the role of calcium ion in muscle contraction? That will be to bind to the troponin, and this results in the conformational change. Okay, so that myosin can easily bind to the actin. Very good. Which type of muscle is found in the walls of the heart? Which type of muscle tissue is found in the walls of the heart? No doubt in that, that will be in the cardiac muscle, heart. What is the name of the connective tissue that surrounds an entire muscle? What will be the name of the connective tissue that surrounds an entire muscle? Just know this, that will be epimysium. Okay, that epimysium is the outer layer of the connective tissue. Which muscle is responsible for flexing the elbow? Which muscle is responsible for flexing the elbow? See, these are all the questions or rather factual information. Okay, I have explained the concept, but if I explain the factual information, we need more time. Okay, and we don't have much time now. So that by answering these questions, just know the facts. Okay. For flexing the elbow, we need a biceps brachii. Okay, it is a primary muscle responsible for elbow fluctuation. What is the role of ATP in muscle contraction? Whether it is inhibiting the muscle contraction or it will be promoting the muscle contraction. Whether it helps the myosin to bind to the actin or it helps the myosin to get away from the actin. Think correctly and answer this question. Provides energy for the muscle contraction, right? Which type of muscle fiber is adapted for endurance activities? Endurance activities. For these activities, which muscle fiber is it? Which type of muscle fiber is getting used? During an exercise. During an exercise, we are in need of what? That will be a type 1 slow twitch. Okay, type 1 fibers are involved in the slow twitch fibers or adapted for the endurance due to high oxidative capacity. During the exercise, we are in need of higher oxygen. Okay. Now, which of the following muscles is involved in breathing process? Which muscle are involved in breathing process? That will be diaphragm. Very good. Now, which term describes the ability of muscle tissue to return to its original shape after contraction or extension? Which term describes the ability of a muscle tissue to return to its original shape after contraction or extension? Elasticity, extensibility, irritability, contractility. That will be elasticity. Okay, this elasticity is the correct term. It refers to the ability of muscle tissue. It is getting back to its original shape. Okay. What is a motor unit? A single muscle fiber, a group of muscle fiber, a motor neuron, and all the muscle fiber, it innervates a muscle and its tendon. What is meant by motor unit? We are calling this actin and myosin as a motor protein. And what is exactly the motor unit is? That will be a motor neuron and all the muscle fibers it innervates. Okay, motor neuron consists of a motor neuron and motor fibers it controls, right? Which enzyme breaks the acetylcholine in the synaptic cleft? Acetylcholine. It is breaking the acetylcholine in the synaptic cleft. What is the name of an enzyme? Acetylcholinesterase, adenylate cyclase, myosin ATPase, phosphorylase. No point of having a doubt here. Acetylcholinesterase, right? See, this is it is the one which is breaking down the acetylcholine that terminates the signal transmission at the neuromuscular junction. Okay. Now, which type of muscle contraction involves a muscle lengthening while maintaining tension? That will be the eccentric. Okay, see, eccentric contraction is the one occurs when muscle lengthens while producing force. Okay, that the name of the contraction will be the eccentric contraction. Just read about the what are all the other types of contraction. Okay. And if you find any difficulties, just ask me in tomorrow's class. Which muscle is known as the calf muscle? Calf muscle is nothing but a gastrocnemius. Okay, this gastrocnemius along with the soleus, we are forming the calf muscle. Okay, see, which muscle group is responsible for extending the knee? See, to extend the knee, quadriceps is a muscle group. It is the one involving in the extension of knee. Okay, just know it. What is the primary function of smooth muscle? Voluntary movement, pumping blood, involuntary control of organs, reflex action. What is the primary function of the smooth muscle? That will be the involuntary control of organs. Maximum all the internal organs having the smooth muscle. Okay. Which muscle is primary flexor of the hip joint? Primary flexor of the hip joint. And the name of the muscle will be the iliopsoas. Okay. This is the primary muscle responsible for the hip flexion. And what is muscle hypertrophy? Increase in muscle size, decrease in muscle size, loss of muscle function, inflammation of muscle tissue. What is muscle hypertrophy? That will be increase in muscle size. As the name suggests, hyper means what? Increase. Which of the following muscle is involved in rotating the head? I added all these questions because you should know that what are all the muscles present in which region. Okay, by answering these questions, at least you have some idea about the basic knowledge about the muscles, name of the muscle. The muscle which is involving in rotating the head will be sternocleidomastoid. Okay, sternocleidomastoid. Right, this is the muscle involved in rotating and flexing the head. Now, what is the term for the connective tissue that attaches muscle to the bone. The most important question. Okay. You should know what is ligament and what is tendon. What is the difference between ligament and tendon? If it is attached with a muscle to the bone, then what will be, you are calling them as? That will be a tendon. Okay. Tendon is the one which attaching the muscle to the bone. And bone is getting attached to the other bone, that it will be done by the ligament. You should know what will be the difference between a ligament and tendon. Okay. And which muscle type has a striated appearance and is under involuntary control? It is involuntary and has a striated appearance. Cardiac muscle. Okay. Now, which muscle group is primarily responsible for adducting the thigh? That will be adductors. Okay. What is the main function of the pectoralis major muscle? We have a pectoralis major and pectoralis minor. And what is the function of the pectoralis major? Extension of arm, flexion and adduction of the arm, rotation of the arm, abduction of the arm. And just tell me where exactly this pectoralis major is present. It is supporting the chest wall. Okay, right? Flexion and abduction of the arm. Okay, this is what a function done by the pectoralis major. Which muscle is commonly referred to as the six-pack muscle? And this is the muscle, it is rectus abdominis. It is the muscle commonly referred to as the six-pack muscle. And what is a neuromuscular junction? What is neuromuscular junction? The connection between two muscle, the point where a nerve fiber meet a muscle fiber, the connection between two bones, the point where two nerves meet. That will be the point where the nerve fiber meets the muscle fiber. Very good. Which muscle extends the forearm at the elbow? That will be triceps brachii. Okay, it is the one responsible for extending the forearm at the elbow. And what is the term for the constant, slightly contracted state of all muscles? See, knowing about that, all the meaning of these terminologies are very, 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 very important. Okay, you should know what is muscle tone. See, if the death of a person result in muscle tone or muscle fatigue, all these terminologies are very important. Okay, see now, what is the term for constant, slightly contracted state of all the muscle? It results in the muscle tone. Okay, it is a state of continuous and passive partial contraction of the muscle. Okay, this is what we are calling them as the muscle tone. Like that, you have to know what are all the meaning of the all other words, right? Okay, which muscle is primarily responsible for plantar flexion of the foot? And that will be the gastrocnemius. Okay, See, we have completed all these things, and for tomorrow's class, just read and come the sensory organs. Okay, eye and ear. We are going to discuss these two. Sense organs, eye and ear. And that's all about today's session. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me now, or else you can leave the class. And the PPT will be shared immediately after the class in the group. Make use of it. Just revise the concepts which I have been attached in the initial first 4 to 5 pages. Okay, any doubts, any clarification you want to know? Okay, do you need any extra information regarding the muscle contraction then? Okay, do you need extra information from the muscle contraction or else what? Uh, okay then. Okay, let me attach the extra information. Right. I thought it was available there. Okay. Okay, then I'll make some arrangements in tomorrow class regarding the diagrammatic explanation of muscle contraction, right? Okay. For tomorrow, you just read and come the sense organs. I'll also attach some of the pictures regarding the muscle contraction. Okay, we'll cover tomorrow. We'll cover tomorrow. Okay, regarding eye and ear. That is what the entire MCQ series is for. Okay, to cover all the important topics. Not all important, all the topics in our syllabus. So, okay, don't worry about that. We'll provide you everything tomorrow. Okay, fine. Is there anything else? Okay, just read all the first slides then it will be very useful, okay? All these things are very, very important. Okay? Okay, fine. Is there anything else? Shall we wind up or do you have any clarification? Okay, fine. Thank you. Tomorrow the same time, 8:30 p.m. Kindly join the class at sharp 8:30. Okay? Don't make any delay. Fine. Thank you, everyone.